run a business forever. Right? There's a lot of shiny objects in business, but when you kind of keep it simple of diversified marketing, good hiring, clean financials, like that's what it takes to grow a good business.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Marketing Inc. I have got an awesome guest with me today, Mr. Nathan Hirsch. Welcome to the show.
Hallie, thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had the pleasure of speaking with Nathan pretty recently and found it super interesting because he is a serial entrepreneur and he has multiple different businesses, which we'll certainly talk about today. One of the things I found very fascinating was the way in which he goes about finding those businesses and then placing operators in those businesses to really reduce the time that he has to spend. I thought this would be an awesome insight and conversation for everybody to hear today. So, Nathan, I know that Accounts Balance is one of your newest businesses, which I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. But why don't you just kind of bring everybody up to speed on who you are, what you do, and kind of how you got to this point in your life and your business?
Yeah, so I'm a longtime entrepreneur. I've been building businesses since I was 20. I met my business partner, Connor, when I was in college, and I started off buying and selling textbooks, competing with my school bookstore, trying to get more back at the end of the semester selling them. And I got a cease and desist letter from my college telling me to knock it off and stop competing with me. Or stop competing with them. So that was my first glimpse into being an entrepreneur. And I had this Amazon account. This was 2008, 2009. No one really knew what Amazon was. Being an Amazon seller wasn't a thing. And I started just experimenting with what products besides books I could sell. And I really hit the jackpot. I found baby products and toys, and I had to be one of the first 1,000 non-book sellers on Amazon and started building relationships with all these different manufacturers in the US. At the time, they didn't really know what e-commerce was. So my selling pitch to them was, I'll sell your products. And this business grew. And I really struggled to hire because I was in college and college kids were super unreliable. So a buddy of mine introduced me to my first virtual assistant. And I started creating what I called my VA army to run this Amazon business. There wasn't a lot of software back then. So they were doing everything from talking to manufacturers, customer service, repricing, you name it. Now, I kind of saw the writing on the wall that these manufacturers didn't really need me to sell on Amazon. I didn't have my own products. I was selling their products. But I had all these great VAs and freelancers that I had spent a lot of time vetting and learning how to hire. And now becoming an Amazon seller, this was 2015, was a new hot thing. Everyone was selling Amazon courses. There were Amazon coaches. Everyone was selling a product on Amazon. So I started offering these VAs and freelancers to the Amazon sellers and created an Upwork type platform called FreeUp for pre-vetted e-commerce VAs and freelancers. And by the end of it, we were into marketing and other niches as well, but we started off in e-commerce, and that business was a lot of fun. I got to learn marketing and partnerships and podcasts and all the stuff that you didn't really have to do as an Amazon seller. And our claim to fame is we got that to doing about $12 million a year, no office, no US employees. This was pre-COVID, before working from home was cool. And we exited it in 2019 to the Hoff. Had a pretty nice life-changing exit. Wow. And yeah, post that sale, we kind of sat down and said, hey, what do we want to do? We want to build businesses that don't rely on me, that don't require work travel or working nights or going to conferences or whatever it was, and really put operators in place for these different companies, which we can talk more about.
Yeah, that is an amazing story. So you clearly just have the entrepreneurial gene starting something like that at such a young age, but you definitely did tap into something super powerful. So through your work with FreeUp, that's really where I, first kind of connected with you and learned more about you. And I think that the virtual assistant side is obviously something we could probably have a huge conversation on, because it is such an important thing for business owners. And I still find that a ton of business owners do not really understand the power of virtual assistants. They don't have virtual assistants. So that is definitely something we could, potentially tap into through the rest of this conversation. But I absolutely love what you started doing through that business, which is, it sounds like, removing yourself from a very early point. Instead of placing an operator, you were placing virtual assistants to handle all of these different things for you, and got to see what it looked like to have a business that did not rely on you independently to be able to grow. So after you exited that business, what was that next business that you decided to get into, and what made you decide that specific type of business?
Yeah, and quick plug, our non-compete with FreeUp is up, so we might be getting back into the freelance marketplace virtual assistant
Awesome.
space. So I don't have anything yet, but hit me up down the line and we might have something for you.
For
But
sure.
yeah, so after we sold FreeUp, we kind of sat down and said, hey, what do we want to do? I mean, the original plan was to take a year, 2 years off, travel the world. I didn't think I'd see my business partner, Connor, for a year, and we sold it in November 2019. So COVID hit right after that and kind of destroyed all of our travel plans. Like everyone else, we were stuck inside watching Netflix, but we also had no job, no business to run. We had really nothing to do. So it kind of forced us into started brainstorming other businesses before we really had planned to. So our next business was Outsource School. It really a passive income stream. We took all of our hiring processes, interview questions, SOPs, and put it into a yearly membership. And that was a lot of fun. We've helped a lot of people. It's still running today. We have people that it's completely revamped their business because they're finally able to hire A players
Yeah.
and keep them around. But that wasn't a 40, 50 hour a week thing. So that was kind of bought us time while we brainstormed and did a lot of testing and market research on other ideas. And something that kept coming back to us was financials. I mean, with the Amazon business, our finances were always a mess. We were college kids. We had no idea what we were doing. We were doing it ourselves or hiring other college kids to do it or dumping it on our CPA. And with FreeUp, one of the best decisions we ever made was hiring a bookkeeper from day one. Before we had proved the idea, before we were profitable, it allowed us to not only make good decisions and scale the company, but when we went to sell it 4 years later, we had 4 years of immaculate books going back to day
Yeah.
one and helped us pass due diligence. So it kind of gave us the idea to start a bookkeeping business. But the crazy thing is, we're not bookkeepers, we're not accountants. So that kind of gave us the idea of, can we hire an operator? Can we hire a bookkeeper that is really a partner of ours to run the bookkeeping business? Ideally, someone who has run a bookkeeping business before, doesn't like the sales, doesn't like the marketing, but can manage a team and handle the bookkeeping at a high level. And we have to really trust this person. So that was kind of the first. Outsource School is a real business, but the first like service-based B2B
Mhm.
scalable business that we built after FreeUp and really tested that idea of, would the operator work?
I love that. So that is it's a big position to fill, especially when you yourself, as you said, you're not a bookkeeper, an accountant, or a CPA. How did you go about finding this person as an operator? What was that process like?
Yes, a lot of networking, a lot of posting jobs on different platforms. I think we found her on ZipRecruiter, but I mean, that was, we had cast a wide net just trying to find different reliable bookkeepers. We talked to bookkeepers that had bookkeeping practices to see if we could just buy their practice or see if they were burnt out or whatever. So yeah, we just started talking to different bookkeepers and so tried to find people that had the same values as us, that wanted the same thing as us. And we came across Shelia, who had just left her job, who had run a bookkeeping business before, who kind of had that entrepreneurial itch in terms of, she loves building, she loves systems, she loves processes, and she thought we were two crazy 30-year-olds with an idea to start a bookkeeping business that knew nothing about building a bookkeeping business, and she thought it was a lot of fun and wanted to dive in.
So, how many interviews would you say you had to do before you found her and felt confident that she was the right fit?
Yeah, real interviews probably 7 or 8, but there were some like calls and stuff, like real in-person interviews, because she's right in
Mhm.
Colorado. 7 or 8, but before that, there was a lot of emails back and forth with people, phone calls, questions, kind of before we narrowed it down to the actual in-person interviews.
And how did you decide on who those kind of final candidates were going to be? Because I'm sure after all of that, you had probably a pretty solid pool of a couple of people who could be the right fit for this. What were those criteria that you were looking for that helped you decide on the one?
Yeah, so there's 6 factors that we're looking for. We want someone who's been there, done that before. I kind of mentioned that, but another example is our SEO business. We wanted to hire an operator who had run an SEO business, who had dealt with 100+ articles being written every single month. We don't want someone
Mhm.
who's trying it for the first time, even if they have a lot of talent or experience in other things. We want someone who's actually run a very similar business before. Number 2 is the most important. Same values. We just believe in not screwing people over, treating people really well, listening to feedback. If we make a mistake or someone on our team makes a mistake, owning up to it and just making it right with everyone and leaving on good terms. And just like Connor and I just have values that we believe in when it comes to entrepreneurship and life, and we only want to work with people that have those same values. And if they care about money over everything else, or they would throw someone under the bus to save themselves, or they don't take responsibility for mistakes they make, those are just not the type of people we want to work for or work with. Number 3 is entrepreneurial spirit. So again, they don't have to like every part of being an entrepreneur. I'm not sure I like every part of being an entrepreneur, but they have to want to build and grow and work with other people. They can't just be like, hey, I want to do my thing over here. And they really just like trying stuff, throwing stuff against the wall, knowing that failure is a part of it. And they really kind of look towards us on the advice and the building processes of stuff that they're not good at, the sales and marketing, hiring, whatever. They hate doing what we love. That's number 4. So that's a good one. We don't like doing bookkeeping. They don't like doing sales. So it kind of works out. Process junkies. They have to be super organized, love systems, love processes, love documenting everything, filming training videos. Because one thing we learned with FreeUp is by the end of it, we had all our team leaders in charge of the SOPs. We had so many SOPs, we couldn't be in charge of them anymore.
Yeah.
And just in it for the long term. Number 6, like we always joke with them that they signed a lifetime agreement with us. They didn't actually, but that's kind of the mentality that we're in. Like we want to work together for years to come. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs, but we're all on the same side and we're going to work together to make the best decision. So that's really what we look for.
I love it. So when you decided, this person is the one, we're going to bring this person in, what does your process look like from there? How involved are you in the initial pieces of the business? Or is that really what you're letting the operator handle and you're simply selling the services?
Yeah, very involved in the initial point with the goal of getting us out of operations relatively quickly. So it started off with us all meeting at a coffee shop and us saying, we don't know anything about running a bookkeeping business. Tell us everything that we should know. And she just laid it out and we started to map out, okay, like client comes to our site, what kind of lead magnets can we give them? How do they get a quote? What kind of project or clients can we not take on? What happens once they add payment and sign up? How do we get them integrated? What's the catch-up process look like? What's the monthly process look like? So really laying that out there. And then what we do with all of our companies, whether it's FreeUp, Outsource School, even the Amazon businesses, we try to get a minimum viable product out there as quickly as possible. What is the bare minimum we need to go to market, try to get beta testers for the product with the agreement that they're going to get hooked up on price. We gave everyone 2 free months of bookkeeping. And in exchange, they have to be patient with us. Certain things could break along the way, but also give us feedback on how we can improve the service going forward, how we can make things faster and better for them. And if we can't give away 2 free months of bookkeeping to 10, 15 people, or they don't stick around after 2 months, that's a pretty good sign. We got to shut it down and move on to the next thing. And that's kind of life as an entrepreneur. And if it does go well, then you start to make changes from the beta and then roll out the real launch. So we started to hype it up on social media, use our old connections, clients in our other company, Outsource School, stuff like that to try to build awareness, tried to give away those 2 free months of bookkeeping, get those clients in the door and really use those clients to break all of our processes and figure out, hey, what are things we didn't think about that we need to put into place, make sure they were happy before opening it up to the public.
Well, I think you said so much there that is incredibly valuable. The first thing would be, you guys have already built successful businesses, yet you didn't start this and say, well, we're going to charge premium pricing from day one because we know that that's what we deserve. You went the beta route, which is something that I think a lot of people, when they're starting a new venture or maybe their first venture, they're really hesitant or unwilling to do. So I see this a lot with people who are starting businesses in the digital space sometimes. They don't want to do that. And ultimately, that is one of the best ways to go ahead and, like you said, first and foremost, make sure that people want it. If you're giving away 2 free months of bookkeeping and nobody wants it, that's your first problem. That's your first sign that something has got to be adjusted. And then make sure that what you're giving them is really the best possible product. And you're not doing that on people who paid you top dollar prices. You're doing it with people who understand from the very beginning that this is a new process, this is a new venture, and they're getting getting something in return, which is great pricing or 2 months for free. And you guys have the real feedback that you need to make better decisions moving forward. So when you got that first group of beta testers essentially for the bookkeeping business, was there anything that you found that really needed to be changed or addressed or tweaked?
Yeah, that there's a lot. I mean, everything from how do we get access to everything we need as quickly as possible. A client signs up with us, we need view only access to their banks, credit cards, any
Mhm.
loan documents they have, stuff like that. And how do we present it in a very clean way and nudge people along that are busy? Every entrepreneur is busy. They don't want to be putting stuff together for the bookkeepers, but we can't get started without that stuff. And we also don't want to get started without that stuff or get
Yeah.
started with poor information, because then we have to go back and that wastes everyone's time and it's not good for them and it's not good for us. So first thing is, how do we make integration as smooth, as clean as possible? And that became our focus, so clients had a good experience. Next, it was what clients could we not work with. We took some clients on that had crypto in their business and stuff like that, and that's a whole nother ball game. So we started to
Mhm.
kind of narrow down, like, what are things we won't take on. Hey, if a client is consistently intermingling personal and business, we won't take them on unless we're just doing like January 2025 going forward, and they have business accounts going forward, and we're not going backwards. Bigger cleanup projects, if someone's 4 years behind on their books, like, what is the limit? How far back will we
Yeah.
really go where it's not worth it? And we don't want to take on people where, hey, we do 3 years worth of cleanup and then they drop us right after that. We have
Yeah.
to put rules and terms of use in place that keep people on after that. Just communication expectations with clients and being picky there. Hey, if you sign up and we can't even get through integration in a reasonable time, chances are it's not going to work out on a monthly basis going forward. So I'm sure I could go on and on, but just some examples of things that, as someone who never ran a
Mhm.
bookkeeping business, I wouldn't think of until I actually got into the weeds with different clients.
Definitely. Well, I think, from the very first step in almost any business, that process is so important. Definitely on the agency side as well. So, anybody who has an agency that's listening to this, those are very similar first steps, different in terms of the information that you're getting. But ultimately, having the access that you need and all the information that you need can be a challenge. The question is, how do you get everything that you need as quickly as possible so that you can move forward? Because at the end of the day, a lot of the time, if there is a big delay, even if it's on the client side, the client is still not typically thrilled about it. So, what did you find sped up that very first access and integrations piece so that you guys could really hit the ground running and also identify very early on if this person was not actually the right fit for what you were going to be providing?
Yeah, so we kind of broke it down into steps. So step one, it's confirm that we have all the right accounts. So before we start getting access to stuff and looking at documents and stuff, let's get a list of what bank accounts did you use in the time period we're going back, what credit cards did you use, processors, loans. We send the client a list and we say, correct us where we're wrong. And we let
Mhm.
them know that, like, if they approve this step and then down the line they're like, by the way, I have this bank account that we never told you about, it could increase your price, it could delay everything, whatever. So we kind of, before we dive into anything, we go through those accounts, we make sure we identify which ones are business, which ones are personal. Removing the personal ones, we can always add the transactions back, but get that confirmation. Step two is a document that breaks down step-by-step instructions. You have a Bank of America, this is exactly how you give us access. And
Mhm.
a creative thing we found is we said, we will give you $100 if you complete this within 5 days.
I
$100 off your
love that.
first bill. And we'll offer you a call. We can do it all with you, but you get $100 if you don't take us up on the call offer and you do it yourself within 5 days. And if you don't feel like doing that, we're happy to hop on a call to get that done. And then the next part is kind of setting up that follow-up sequence where you're like, hey, just want to make sure you got this email. Hey, shooting the client a text. Do you want to hop on a call and go through it? What can we do to get it? And we let them know, like, you can't book your kickoff call until we have all this information. So the longer that you take, it's not good for anyone. We can't start on your books until we have the kickoff call. So that was kind of the process that we came up with. And we just had the client go through it today in a day. It was pretty great. We sent them the accounts. They said, hey, everything is right besides this one account, swapped it out. Here are the instructions, gave us all the access we need. We gave them $100. They schedule the kickoff call and then we get going, and it's pretty smooth.
I love that. Giving them an incentive is definitely a very, very smart idea. Like I said, I mean, so many similarities between the way that it works in the agency business as well as, many service-based businesses is you've got to have what you need before you can get started. And whatever you can do to make that easier, like you said, really detailed documentation for all of the different types of banks and types of accounts that someone might have. And so was that something that you guys put together, or was that something that, did you say her name was Shelly?
Shell, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that Shelly put
We
together
put
for
that
you.
together. I
Hmm.
mean, yeah, we put those instructions together. The thing about banks is they're always changing. People will use a random bank you've never heard of. So
Yeah.
kind of over time, we started off with all like the main banks, Chase, Capital One, Bank of America, all the stuff that people usually have, and tried to dig it onto their site and get those instructions. And then as clients came to us with different either local banks or whatever it was, we kind of updated that directory. And
Hmm.
then if a client would come to us and say, hey, like the instructions you gave me don't exactly match, we try to update them and going forward as well.
That's awesome. So you got your onboarding pieces tightened up, straightened out. Sounds like everything, became a lot more smooth at that point. What were some of the other things that based on that beta round you decided to do or maybe decided to fix? Whether it was, I know you mentioned the different types of businesses that you chose not to work with, which I think is also a very important thing for anybody listening. You don't have to work with everyone if it's going to make your life more challenging or it's going to be far outside of what you would like your standard operating procedures to be. It's okay to say no. But what were some other things that you really were able to either kind of make shifts or changes in what you thought your path was going to be, or really those processes that you felt needed to be refined?
Yeah, so when you think of bookkeeping or accounting, that's a pretty big umbrella, right? There's like paying vendors and chasing clients down for payments. There's sales tax. There's all these different parts of it. So
Yeah.
we started to realize, hey, like let's focus on what we're good at. And there's usually software and tools and easy solutions for everything else. So we're just like, hey, we're going to focus on monthly bookkeeping, charge on the first, books by the 15th each month, income statement, balance sheet, cash flow on time every single month, with a dedicated bookkeeper that responds within a business day at all times, great customer service, and really define our offer, which we didn't do right away. It took us a few months to really figure that out. You mentioned like what kind of clients not to work with. Also, like how far back we would go on like catch up cleanup projects, which I mentioned. And then pricing is a big one, right? Like the beta
Hmm.
clients, we're giving them 2 free months, but we're also
Yeah.
saying like, this is your price after the 2 free months. No one's just signing up with a just question mark, like, all right, you'll
Yeah.
let me know at the end of 2 months what it's going to cost.
Hmm.
So then we start to realize, like, what did we do right on the pricing? What did we not? What's taking up a lot of the client's time, and kind of creating our pricing formula of, hey, revenue, transactions, complexity of business, number of accounts that you have, what actually goes into the pricing formula. And we're actually able to add an estimated pricer to our site. If you go to accountsbalance.com/pricing, it's still an estimate. We got to look at your books before we give you a quote, but people at least would have a ballpark of what they would get into. And pricing probably took the full year of just making tweaks
Hmm.
along the way to really get it down. And I feel like agency, same thing. Like you shouldn't just land on your price. This is what I think it should be. That first
Yeah.
year is really figuring out like, hey, can I sell at that price? What do I have to account for? How do I make adjustments?
100%. And I think a lot of people, when they first go into it, especially, they feel like they're locking themselves into something. And that is so not the case. You are the business owner. You always have the opportunity to make those changes as you see a need for them. Doesn't mean you have to go back and change the pricing with everyone that you've worked with, but businesses do change their pricing. They do change their pricing models. And some people are going to be on board with that and some people aren't. But if it's for the betterment of your business, you've got to be able to go ahead and make those decisions. So, you mentioned thinking about lead magnets, ways that you're going to market this business. You talked a little bit about that ideal client that you wanted to work with, maybe in terms of what they didn't have, but how did you really land on the clients that you wanted to work with specifically in terms of the industry? And what was your approach to marketing in the early stages of this business?
So we started off going after e-commerce sellers, and we kind of figured out like, hey, like we want Amazon sellers, we want Shopify sellers, we like sellers that are over $500,000 a year. They're probably not going out of business tomorrow.
Yeah.
They can't be intermingling personal and business. They have to understand like their inventory. They can't just give us like a big inventory mess, stuff like that. So we started to kind of set parameters, and once we kind of figured out the e-com balance side, the e-commerce side, then we said, okay, we can offer a lower price point to agencies and SaaS and real estate agents. So we launched Accounts Balance, which was a separate brand, not to confuse people. So they're not going to Ecom Balance saying, hey, I don't have an e-commerce site. This doesn't work for me. And e-commerce bookkeeping is more complicated. There's software that connects to the different platforms. So definitely a higher price point there. So differentiating Ecom Balance and Accounts Balance, creating the lead magnets. Like we have a bookkeeping case study on how it helped us through due diligence, how we exited a business with it. We have sample reports. You can see exactly what our clients get every single month, what your reports will look like, common mistakes that people make with bookkeeping, stuff like that. We did a little podcast circuit, although I've kind of cut back on podcasts now. SEO is something we launch with every business that we start, putting out high quality content. My business partner, Connor Gillivan, if you're not following him on LinkedIn, I check it. I recommend checking him out. He does a lot with SEO, and that's always been his bread and butter. So kind of setting the framework of partnerships, podcasts, SEO, putting out social media content. And the last piece that you and I were chatting about, that's kind of my goal for the last part of this year, but really for next year, is that paid ads piece, that paid email piece, because my goal is I want to grow these businesses, don't get me wrong, and I want to add businesses to the portfolio, but I also want to not hustle. Like I hustled through my 20s. It was completely worth it. I had an exit. I'm in a great position. I'm super fortunate. But if I want these businesses to run, I don't want to be going to conferences. I don't want to work after 3 p.m. I don't want to work weekends. I want to be able to turn down podcasts and opportunities that don't align with what I want to do. And we've always been good at the organic side, and we still get clients organically and the businesses grow organically. But if we can figure out that ads piece and that cold email piece, that's just going to accelerate it, because we believe in our systems. When clients come in, they have a great experience. We make sure of it. All of that is locked in. We're 3 years into the business. So it becomes a game of how many high qualified leads can we pump into the system, knowing that they're going to have a good experience once they get in. And like, I never look at our clients' books. Our bookkeepers do a great job. They really handle it from there. I'm there if anyone needs anything. I'm pretty easy to contact, but usually they don't.
Yeah, no, I think that is super smart, because a big mistake that I do see people making is trying to go into paid ads too soon. Now, there is certainly a model for testing a brand new offer using ads, because not everybody has a large network. Not everybody has some of these opportunities to really get those initial clients in the door, make sure that they're able to test their pricing, test the services that they're offering in those packages. But paid ads is far less risky and far more effective when you've already done that groundwork like you guys have, being able to really understand that your pricing is solid. It's not something that's too difficult to sell. It's something where your profit margins. Obviously, you guys are now in the financial space, and so you're keeping a close eye on what those numbers are. You have enough time operating to know how long your clients are typically going to stay with you. And it doesn't mean you're going to truly know the ultimate customer lifetime value, because they might stay for 10 years. You guys have only been open for 3 years, but you certainly are going to see in the first couple of years what the revenue per customer is going to look like, so that you can better estimate what you can actually afford to spend to acquire a new customer. So all of those things, the customer service side, the retention side, I do think it's a great idea that you were able to do those things first before diving into paid ads, because it really does make those next steps far more easy. And so just great advice to anybody who's listening. If you don't have a clear handle on those things, you really want to try and get those locked in first. So on the marketing side, I know you mentioned SEO is something that you like to incorporate into all of your businesses early on. What's your strategy for doing that? Do you have certain types of content you're focused more on? Talk me through a little bit of what that looks like and how long you give that to really kind of take effect.
Yeah, in all of our companies, we start SEO from day one. It's usually pretty simple. We're putting up 3 to 5 blog articles a month, and we're getting backlinks with different partners in the space. That's usually how it starts, and then we kind of increase it from there. And if you look at Ecom Balance, like there were lots of e-commerce bookkeeping firms that started 5 years ahead of us. But if you search e-commerce bookkeeping and terms around that, Ecom Balance comes up ahead of a lot of those guys, because in those first 2 years, we invest in a lot of content. And It's very similar to, I mean, for years, people asked us if we could run their SEO, and we kind of turned them down until we found an operator and launched an SEO business.
Hmm.
Trio SEO, it's the same thing that we do for our own businesses. And really, we sit down and build out a strategy of the competitors, the keywords. We start at the bottom of the funnel and work our way up. What are the keywords that the people who are trying to buy a bookkeeping service or buy an SEO service or hire a virtual assistant or whatever it is are searching for, and then work our way up from there. And we work in 90-day sprints. Same thing that we do for our clients. Every 90 days, we're kind of looking out and saying, hey, what are our competitors doing? What are we doing that's working really well? What are the keywords that have actually led to clients? And make that adjustment and then execute the next 90 days. And content, high quality content, human written, that speaks to our ideal audience, that is really the key to SEO and how you get Google to trust you. And then the backlinks and the technical SEO and all that, it just supports what you're doing on the content side.
Awesome. I love that. So you've got Shelly as your operator. What does she primarily focus on as the business has grown? So you've got other bookkeepers that are now working within the business. How are her responsibilities shifting and changing with those things and with those new people coming on? And then what is typically your next step? You've got this operator, you're very heavy in the operations early on so that you can remove yourself later. At what point do you feel like you can take a step back and kind of let that person do what they need to do? And what parameters do you put around that to ensure that you're still in the loop somehow without being knee deep in the weeds of what's going on a daily basis?
Yeah, so around Shelia, we have a few different people. We have one person who manages the bookkeepers and actually communicates with them, checks in with them. If there's any client issues, they'll go right to that person instead of Shelia, so she's not just being bombarded there. And
Mm-hmm.
then we give her a number two that helps with reviews before they go out to the clients as well. So the year 2 to 3 was her just doing a lot of building, testing out software, building it, figuring out our bookkeeping tech stack, building all of our SOPs, training the bookkeepers. Now that the bookkeepers are trained and we have the tech stack and a lot of the SOPs are built, now she kind of revolves around going to different bookkeepers and keeping them up to speed, checking in on them. She does book reviews and gives feedback to them. So she's very involved in the actual running of like the monthly bookkeeping service. We charge clients on the 1st. By the 15th, everyone needs their books. So making sure that all the books get there and that she can help with any issues that come up. And she's got a small team, a leadership team around her to kind of help so it doesn't get overwhelming there. And then stuff will come up. We'll test different softwares. We'll have an idea we'll run by her or whatever it is. And we meet with our leadership team once a week, and just our goal is really, how do we support you? Like, we don't need to know about every little issue that's going on, team issue, client issue. Luckily, there's not that many of them. But if there's something that you need help with, we've taught them and they do a great job of bringing it to our attention so that we can use our experience to work with them to try to solve that problem or figure out a solution. They might come to me and say, hey, this client's underpriced, or they just added a bunch of stuff, or whatever it is, and we'll kind of problem solve. So my goal with all these companies is support the operators however we can. Maybe it's hiring, problem solving, whatever, and then to focus on the client experience, the marketing, the sales, and build that out, because that's what's going to actually grow and scale the businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So for anybody who has a business that does not have an operator, what do you think a good way is to decide if they may need one? Do you think that every business needs an operator? If so, at what point do you think that that is a good idea to start considering?
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on what kind of business you want to run. Like FreeUp and the Amazon business before, I was the operator. Like, I was
Mhm.
hustling all the time, working all the time, and it worked out really well. But you have to have an exit strategy in place, because you're going to burn yourself out. You can't do that forever. I didn't have kids. I didn't have a lot of responsibilities at the time. Things change. So I mean, if you're trying to have multiple businesses, almost impossible if you don't have operators in there. There's just too much going on. So you just have to decide what kind of business owner you want to be, whether you want to have multiple businesses, if you want to be in the weeds, if you want to operate above the business. That's kind of a decision for you, and there's no right or wrong. And I would kind of go back to, hey, if you do want to hire an operator, doing it early on is always better, because a lot of times they can help you grow it, and they'll bring
Mhm.
things to the table that you don't have, skills and experiences that you don't have. And then I kind of go back to those 6 things that I said before. You got to figure out your values. What does been there, done that before mean? What does entrepreneurship spirit mean for you? What do you hate doing? What that you want to find someone that you love? How do you want SOPs built? And then what does long term look for you? Because not everyone wants to run a business forever. Right now, I want to run my portfolio of businesses forever, but I'm
Mhm.
also post exit. Like I don't need that big payday. I'd much rather just continue building and growing and holding and all of that. So that's what I would figure out. And then you got to do some test runs. And like everything else in entrepreneurship, you might hire some good ones, some bad ones. You'll learn a lot throughout the process, but long term, it's going to help you accomplish a lot more.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Um, how how long do you give someone to identify if they are the right fit or not? Because obviously hiring these people is going to be very important. But equally as important might be letting them go if they're not truly who you need, because you can have some amazing interviews with people. You can, dig into what they're telling you, but sometimes it's just not going to be the result that you want, or you just find that maybe they're not a good fit in terms of the way that the two of you work together. So, what is your philosophy on kind of red flags, signs that someone may not be the right fit, and when to say, okay, it's time to let him go?
Yeah, it's a great question. The answer is as short as possible. Like if you see red flags, you want to get out of that as quickly as possible. It's kind of now when I'm doing this with Facebook ads people. I'm trying to give people 90 days, but and,
Yeah.
and I'll sign 90-day agreements or whatever. But if I notice big red flags in like month one, like maybe I buy them out or we work out something, but I'm not just gonna like keep them on because I'm obligated to 90 days. I'm gonna honor my
Yeah.
agreement and try to end on good terms and all this stuff I would normally do. And same thing with the operators. And it depends what it is. Like there's going to be learning curves. Like Shelia ran a bookkeeping business, but I mentioned she doesn't like the marketing, the sales, and the bookkeepers like developers. They don't speak necessarily the same language as entrepreneurs. So there's like communication hurdles and stuff like that you can overcome. But if I notice early on they don't have the same values as me, or they're not going to treat customers the same way or the same team, like stuff like that usually doesn't change. So I would try to get out of that and just leave on good terms as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that I've learned myself this year more than anything, I think, is to go ahead and let people go early on. I tend to try and see the best in people and believe that, with more training, with more time, with more resources, that they might be able to get up to speed. But I think you're exactly right. Some of those core personality traits or characteristics they're very difficult to change. And so if it is something within that realm, then it's going to be financially beneficial and also potentially just save you a ton of time and frustration trying to bang your head against the wall, trying to work with somebody that may not be the right fit for you. You obviously have a ton of experience in the hiring, interviewing side. FreeUp was entirely focused on that. Your digital coaching and course business also focused on that. And then now what you're doing is also got a big component to it because you're bringing in these operators. What do you find is an ideal hiring process for whether it's an operator or any other position within a business?
Yeah, hiring is the bread and butter. If you can learn how to do one thing as an entrepreneur, learn how to hire as early as possible. I learned how to hire in my 20s. I hired my first US employee W-2 before I could even drink. So it's something that if you can learn it early on, it just makes everything else easier. Every problem you can just hire for, everything has a solution and you don't have to master every little thing. So for
Mhm.
us, and this is what we teach at Outsource School, and I encourage people to check it out if you want our hiring process, we call it CARE: communication, attitude, red flags, and experience. We want to focus on someone who can communicate at a high level, that has the right attitude and values that we want, obviously has the experience, they've been there, done that. And then along that process, and this is where a lot of entrepreneurs go wrong, we're looking for the red flags. We're not looking for the right answers. We're looking for the wrong answers. What is someone
Mhm.
telling me that shows me they can't communicate, they don't have the right attitude, or they don't have the experience I need? And that's how I narrow people down. We talk more about like how to onboard people and what happens after that in Outsource School. But yeah, that care is so important. You'll find people where, hey, they've got the experience, but they have a terrible attitude, or they have a good attitude, but they can't communicate. You really need that trifecta of all three in order to have a good hire.
Yeah, for sure. Now, on the financial side of hiring, this is something that I've seen a lot of people hesitate with or be concerned with. They're overwhelmed in their business. They're already doing way too many things. They can't keep up with it, yet they're so terrified to hire an A player because they know that if they get someone who's been there, done that, that has the experience, they're going to pay potentially a higher price for that role. What do you say to people who know that they need to hire, regardless of what position it is, but they're worried that the financial investment is not going to work out for them, essentially?
Yeah, it's always tough. I mean, I like to divide it up between a follower, a doer, and an expert. So a follower is like your $5 to $10 an hour virtual assistant. They can have a lot of experience, but you're hiring them to follow your system, your process. If you don't know how to do it, if you can't do it yourself, you can't hire a follower for it. You can't say, "Hey, go find me leads," and hire a follower, and then be upset when it doesn't work out. The
Absolutely.
the doer, the freelancer, they're specialists. They do the same thing 8 hours a day. They're writers, designers, video editors, whatever it is, and you're hiring them usually project based. Maybe you hire them full time if like you're a video agency or something, but usually you're hiring them part time, project based. You can bring them company to company, whatever it is. But they're not consulting with you. They're not you're not teaching them how to be a video editor. They're there to do that one thing at a high level. And then you've got the experts. They're coming in with their own systems, their own processes, their own experience. And it's collaborative usually. They're coming in, you're working together with them. Sometimes you have no idea how to do it and you're just following their lead. But that kind of eliminates hiring the wrong person, because before you make any hire, you should think to yourself, hey, do I need a follower? Do I need a doer, or do I need an expert? And if the answer is you need an expert, you can't hire that position unless you're going for an expert. So it kind of eliminates everything else.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And especially what you said about the fact that if you are hiring a follower, somebody within that virtual assistant realm, if you do not know how to do that, or at least understand how it works, it is going to be so incredibly difficult for you to work with that person. I see this all the time. There are a lot of people who they do need help. Maybe they do not love the technical side of things. And to be honest, a lot of people don't love the technical side when it comes to marketing. But the truth is, it's very important. You know, if you get the technical side wrong, it can screw up the entire campaign, the entire outcome. Yet, instead of at least taking that time to understand how this is supposed to work, what right and wrong looks like, and the overall concepts and the elements that need to be implemented, somebody will just skip right over that, go for a virtual assistant, and then essentially relinquish all responsibility when it comes to that thing that they're hiring for. And then, exactly like you said, they're disappointed that this person isn't delivering, when in reality, you haven't given them any instruction. You haven't clearly stated what it is that you actually want them to do. And they are not a core decision maker. You can't now, you know, I have some amazing VAs that can make some great decisions, but they've been with me for a while. And so they understand, you know, how I operate, and they've learned a lot. But especially in those early days, you can't expect them to make strategic decisions. You have got to give them that instruction. So I think that is really incredible advice. Any final words of wisdom that you would like to share with the audience today, whether it's on hiring, bookkeeping, starting new businesses, selling businesses, whatever that looks like? What do you think would be something you'd like to leave them with that could really make a positive impact?
Yeah, if you're ever trying to sell your business in the future, really everything we talked about today is important. You need clean financials, you need an operator, you need a great team, you need strong SOPs, you need a clear, clean offer, and a diversified way to actually get leads and market. And that's really what buyers are looking for. And even if you don't want to sell your business, it's still a pretty good idea to set your business up that way. It'll open up that opportunity in the future. You can always turn it down, but that's like, I like to kind of keep it simple. There's a lot of shiny objects in business, but when you kind of keep it simple of diversified marketing, good hiring, clean financials, that's what it takes to grow a good business.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. I know that so many people are going to find it incredibly valuable. Nathan, I know you mentioned a couple different places that people can find you, but if there's one primary place you'd like to direct them to learn more about anything that we've spoken about today, where would you want them to go?
Yeah, check me out on any social media channel or just nathanhirsch.com, and you can find all my businesses through there.
Awesome. Well, it has been a pleasure. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I will see you on the next one. Bye-bye.